felt like our members really deserve this opportunity to hear from Mayor Nelson is one that we haven't had a chance to invite her before this, and 2 years has gone so fast. We meant to get her much sooner, so we're very pleased to have her. But really want her to tell us, about how great Amarillo is and the good things that have happened that they've achieved this last year and what's coming up, and then also how the national, issues and state issues affect us here in Amarillo, whether it's immigration, economy, and so it's a good educational opportunity. We do have Vanna lined up our program, and she's passed out notes for you to write your questions on. So we're going to have a very orderly question and answer process. And so we would ask you to respect that process. Mayor Nelson will be giving us her comments then, and then the questions will be read. Again, it will be an orderly process. We would appreciate no interruptions during the questions. So we, again, we'll start that now with Jana. Did you get a turn? You think you have enough? Okay. Okay, Jana's going to come and tell us a little bit about you too.
Well, Mayor and Kevin, thank you guys so much for coming tonight. Just want to tell you a little bit about our mayor. Ginger Nelson grew up in the small town of Spearman and is a devoted mother, businesswoman, and community volunteer. After graduating from Texas Tech University with degrees in Spanish, advertising, and law, Ginger moved to Amarillo with her husband and high school sweetheart Kevin to follow their dreams of starting a family and business in the Texas Panhandle. Ginger and Kevin are true West Texas entrepreneurs that manage multiple businesses, including a local law firm, commercial real estate management, and local franchise hotel, My Place. Ginger has had the privilege to serve on numerous boards and commissions, including the Amarillo Economic Development Corporation. She has also volunteered for nonprofits, including Boy Scout Troop 86, the Amarillo Symphony Guild, the Amarillo Area Bar Association, the Plymouth Equal Neighborhood Association, and Kids Inc. She is currently proud to serve as Amarillo's 33rd mayor. Ginger and Kevin are proud parents to Madeline, Pierce, and Jace, with Ginger playing an active role in many school organizations. The family attends Hillside Christian Church, where she volunteers and teaches a women's Bible study. So welcome, please give a warm welcome for Mayor Ginger Nelson.
I am so pleased to be with you guys tonight. This is truly my favorite part of serving as mayor, and that is coming and being with the people who I serve. And I recognize that not all of you live in Amarillo, and I don't care, because having grown up Panhandle, I understand that Amarillo is the capital of the Panhandle. And so goes Amarillo, so goes the Panhandle. So whether you vote for the city leadership in Amarillo or not, you shop here and you fund the city services that you receive when you come to Amarillo as your big city. So I'm privileged to be with y'all tonight and honored to have the invitation. I have a few things that I just want to share as far as an update on the city, and then we'll get right into questions, because there's a big stack of them, and that's really my favorite thing to do, is to take questions from you guys anyway. So where are we in the city? Well, we have a tremendous amount of momentum in our city right now. A lot of good opportunities. And it's upon us to use them, to be good stewards with them, to get the most that we can get out of the momentum that we have. And that's a burden that I feel. I want to make sure that we spend our money wisely, that we take care of only the things that a city can take care of, such as public safety and fixing our streets, keeping our water clean. There are some things that only a city can do for its citizens, and those are the things that we have to be focused on first. But then there are the other things that are interesting opportunities, and I'm going to talk some about those here in our time together tonight. Starting first with the things that I know that only a city can do. Only a city can make us a safer city, because we have a police force, we have fire department, we have first responders. Those are the things that make our city safer. And none of us are going to succeed in our family or our businesses unless we know we have a strong foundation of feeling safe in our city. So that is a top priority, and it's been a council priority for the in the time that we've been here. Both years in our budget, we increased the amount of police officers that are on the street. This year, we increased them by 17 officers. Before we did the budget this year, I asked the city manager to ask Chief Drain, what do you need to make our city safer? I didn't make it complicated. I just said, what do you need to make our city safer? And he came back and said, I need more officers, and I need some of this equipment. And so that's what we did. We found a way in the budget to fund $4 million toward public safety. And that's not a one-time expense, because the things that we funded, those 17 police officers, 5 firefighters, body cameras for our officers to wear that keep them safe and keep all of us accountable for what happens when they make a traffic stop or an arrest. That keeps the city safe and accountable. And then some new equipment, some tasers and things like that. And we updated the 911 system, the computer-assisted, it's called CAD, computer-assisted dispatch. There, I actually got it. But you know, when you call 911 as a citizen, it needs to work. And that software was so old, they couldn't patch it anymore. The company that issued it said, we are washing our hands of your software updates. We've updated them and updated them and updated them, and you've squeezed your dollars as far as you can squeeze them. You now have to have new software if you want to know that your 911 system is going to work. Well, we wanted to know ours was going to work. And our software was so old that when they updated the software, the hardware, the computers that ran that software wouldn't do it. They weren't compatible. So of course then we had to buy new computer software, not just the software, but computer hardware also. So those expenses, especially those police officers and the body cameras, those are $2 million worth of expenses that we will have to pay every year. The computer-assisted dispatch system, the 911 system, that's a one-time cost. But the $2 million, we will find that every year. And so when we put it in the budget this year, that's an ongoing, every year, $2 million that we have to hold on to and prioritize in order to keep our funding for those employee positions at the police department. So that's really important, and we're very proud of that. Whatever our first responders need, we have to provide it for them. In years past, we've asked them to cut. That's part of why we were so far behind on our police force, why we had those officer positions. They were there, but they weren't funded, meaning we had those officers in the past, but in recent years, we had asked the police department to cut their budget, and they did it by not replacing those officers as those positions came open. So we know going forward that Amarillo needs to be a safer city, and we know that in order to do that, the city budget needs to reflect the fire department, the police department, and all our first responders as a main priority. Just as an aside, something else that we've started, just trying to be innovative, trying to think of new and different ways to do something. We have started First Responders, Amarillo First Responders, Excellence and Innovation Fund. Now, how's that for a mouthful? And that fund is a charity-driven fund, so we're asking citizens to contribute to it on behalf of our first responders to pay for things that prove excellence and innovation in their department. We use the city budget dollars to pay the basics. No frills. There are no frills in our budget anywhere, and unfortunately that leaves our first responders sometimes not in a position where they could go and get extra training, where they could go and buy this piece of equipment that would help them do their job better. So we're asking citizens who are public safety minded to come alongside us and to make a contribution to this First Responders Excellence and Innovation Fund. So rather than raising taxes, we're asking you as citizens, contribute to the amount that you feel comfortable or that you could, if this is something you're passionate about, contribute to that First Responders Fund. And you can do that online by going to the Amarillo Area Foundation website. So if you just type in Amarillo Area Foundation, you'll see Amarillo First Responders Excellence and Innovation Fund. It's a button, you can click it. You can give $5 or you can give $500. Today we had a very fun phone call at City Hall. An organization in town wants to give $10,000 to the Excellence and Innovation Fund. I was just thrilled that they have the vision. They understand that beyond what we can pay for with our budget dollars, these folks have needs for us. And these are the folks that would come any time of day, anytime we called, and run into danger for us. We, as a citizenship, as a city, want to support them, and this is a way that you can do that, even in the smallest amount. Even if, if we as citizens gave $1 each, there's 200,000 of us. That would be $200,000 the fire department and the police department could split to use every year for something extra. And our goal, our vision for our first responders is to put them in a position where any department in the nation would say, this is a problem, who do we think we can get to help us solve it? Let's call Amarillo, Texas. They have the caliber of leadership in their departments that provide excellence and innovation in solving any problem. And I want us to have a nationwide reputation in our first responders. So in order to do that, we're going to have to back them, and we're going to have to support them financially. And that's something I'm very proud to see this council trying to do. Okay, you know what? Another thing that we need to do from public safety is work very hard on some of our crime statistics. It's okay for us to not be okay, but it's not okay to stay that way, right? And so we have higher rate per capita than a city our size should have. Same thing with domestic violence statistics and drunk driving statistics. More than double what a city our size should have. And so we need to nail down and start asking why. Why do we have that in a community? And what's driving it? What's causing it? Is there something that we could, if we could catch that problem sooner, could we change the trajectory of those crime statistics and have a safer community? So we're working with the police department, asking those questions, and I am here to vouch that they are working very hard with community partners like Family Support Services, and they're working with the Federal Prosecutor's Office, just some different partners in the community trying to drill down on what's the cause of our domestic violence crime rates. And what do we need to change systemically in order to do better and have lower statistics and obviously have a safer city? One of the things that we really need to talk about is our high school dropout rate. That is tied to your crime in your community. The higher your high school dropout rate, obviously the higher your crime statistics. So what can we do as a community? What can we do as a city to help more kids graduate from high school instead of dropping out? One statistic that ties high school dropout rates is third grade literacy. If you are a good reader in third grade, if you can read on level when you're in third grade, you are less likely to drop out of high school, substantially less likely. So if we work backwards from there, we say we want more kids to finish high school, then that means we need more kids to read on grade level at third grade. What feeds that? What feeds it is brain development in kids that are age 0 to 5. There's actually a certain time that your brain can connect and develop itself to be a good reader in third grade, and it happens when you're age 0 to 5. And if your brain doesn't get the stimulation that it needs during that time frame, it won't ever develop. It's kind of like, well, it's kind of like cooking bread, ladies. If you don't let it rise before you put it in the oven, it's never going to be able to catch up, right? And so there's something like that that happens in our brains when we're kids, early kids. That's your only window for that development. So we are having an early childhood summit on April 5th, and everyone in the community is invited to come and understand what it takes for a brain to develop, what needs to happen in that youngster's life for a brain to develop so that they read on level in 3rd grade, so that they'll finish high school, so that they will hopefully go on and be part of our skilled workforce instead of part of our prison community. Because what do we pay for more as a taxpayer? This is much more expensive. So we're right back to that question I was asking you earlier. Can we catch a problem when it's small? Meaning before it costs us what this costs us over here. And I really believe that if we'll start this conversation about what do those brains need, we could be looking in 15 years, which sounds like a long time, but it's really not that long in the scope of a city. 15 years, we could drastically change the trajectory of our city. All because we as a community were willing to come together and have a conversation. I'm inviting the top 100 employers. They're getting a letter from me that says, come, you need to know about this. Because in 15 years, they want to what? They want to hire those kids. And they want them to be high school graduates who are skilled and ready to work in our city. Not kids that have had a record because they couldn't read on grade level in 3rd grade and they almost didn't finish high school and they spent a little bit of time in the county jail. It's all connected. And I get so excited about it. I look at this big fat stack of questions. I think, man, I can't wait. This is my favorite thing to do is to talk about the city. Because I can see the momentum that we have, and I can see that as we're coming together and we're working united and the tone of our city is changing, we can solve this problem in a fairly short time frame. So, all of that to say, it's all public safety related, and that is one of our main priorities. Has to be our main priority in taking care of the city and in serving as an elected official. The second thing I think we really have to work on is growing our economy because it does cost money to operate the city. Keep the libraries open, to repair the streets and the roads, to expand our sewer system. So many things with a whole lot of zeros on them is what it takes to operate the city. So how are we going to do that? Well, Amarillo is in a very unique position because we do have all these 60 communities out of 26 counties that come to Amarillo to shop, to play, to eat at our restaurants and go to our movies. We get the sales tax from all of that activity. And so I was visiting with the mayor of El Paso a few months ago. He said, how much of your revenue comes from sales tax? I said, I think it's 60. He goes, no, it's not. I said, I think it is. And he was so jealous of that because we have this strong sales tax presence that help all these, my folks live in Spearman and Kevin's folks live in Spearman, and they're probably here about once a week. They drive on our roads. They shop in our stores. If they were to have a car wreck, Amarillo Fire Department would come out and help them. And so even though they don't vote here and they don't live here, they use the services of our city. And they're happy to pay for it by buying things and paying sales tax in Amarillo. So we have this strong sales tax base, and you know what it does for us? It allows those of us who do live here and pay property taxes to pay a lower rate. And that's fantastic. And that's actually, y'all remember years and years ago, was it Burger King that had the special sauce on their hamburgers? Sales tax is the special sauce for Amarillo and the way that they pay their budget. So anything we can do to increase our sales tax numbers, number one, it attracts people, tourism, and it supports our local businesses. Anybody in here own a local business? I want more people shopping at local businesses. If you work here in town, you're probably employed by a local business. And I want more people shopping at that business so you can keep your job. But I really want people shopping locally and buying at our local Amarillo businesses because we get a little bitty piece of that sales tax pie. Most of it goes to the state. 6.25% of it goes to the state. We in the city keep 2% of it. But it funds our school system. It funds our city's operations. So our police department, funded by sales tax and property tax. Our roads, we need to repair more of them. That's funded by sales tax and property tax. The more we shop here with each other, not only does it help our businesses employ our friends and neighbors, and those businesses are the people that contribute to our local charities. They support our kids as they go off in tournaments and competitions. But it pays our sales tax. So when we started 2 years ago as a council, we opened the By the Way campaign. Because when you buy locally, you are buying the way to a better city. If you want more services, or you want better services in our city, shop locally. Don't shop online. And I do it too. I know we all do it. There are some products you can only get by clicking that button and it arrives on your doorstep. I understand. And as a working mom, I understand how hard it is to sometimes get to the store during normal hours when it's working, when they're open, because you're working. But every time I decide to shop locally, I'm buying the way to a better city for Amarillo. So even if I only change my habits 10% of the time, I'm going to see a 10% change in what we collect and what we can spend here to benefit us. Since we started that campaign, well, I just got the numbers for the last 12 months. We are on a 3% uptick in our sales tax revenue. And that is because of you guys. And that's why I love living in Amarillo and in the Panhandle. Because when the Panhandle has a problem, the Panhandle chooses to solve it. And you guys have stepped up and said, you know what, we will buy into the By the Way campaign. And we will shop locally with our friends and neighbors that stick their necks out to have a business here in Amarillo and employ people here in Amarillo. And so we're seeing your decision change our city. It's a $750,000 increase in collections, and that money will go toward police officers, repairing streets, keeping libraries open, which is exactly what you guys are telling us your priorities are. So you are buying the way for a better city, and I want to tell you how much we appreciate that. We've got to continue to focus on having a stronger workforce here in Amarillo. So some of the things that we do at the city council level are right now, this budget cycle, and you have to be focused on that. But the best things that we work on are the things where we can put on our hats and think 20 years down the road. So sort of what I was telling you about earlier, if we can change this group of early childhood brain development, in 15 years, we will have a whole crop of kids who are better, skilled, educated workers because they finished high school. And we've got to continue to think long-term like that as leaders about how we develop our workforce here in Amarillo. We have the lowest unemployment of any city in the state. It fluctuates between 2 and 3%. Midland and Amarillo kind of go back and forth on that statistic. That's great because it means everybody who wants to work in Amarillo is pretty much working. The challenge is if you're a business owner and you're trying to hang on to your workforce, or you want to expand your business and grow it, it's really hard to find workers to work. We don't have very many extra workers. And when we look in the city and we want to invest in bringing bigger businesses here, if we wanted to bring a factory that had 1,000 jobs to it, the factory loves our city. They love that we are in the middle of the United States, centrally located. We're right on I-40. We have a gigantic airport that doesn't have a lot of traffic, which makes it easy for them to fly things in and out. We're right beside the railroad. We are perfectly located to recruit manufacturing businesses. But for the fact, we don't have the workers, or the workers we have are not high school educated, a couple of years of education past high school. They're not the skilled workers that those manufacturers are looking for. But we can solve that problem, and we're working on it as a city. So that's something, and you've got questions about that, I could talk for a long time about how we're solving that. But we're partnering with school districts, we're partnering with Amarillo College and West Texas A&M, and together, with the right tone of believing that we can do it and change our city for the better, good things are happening. We've got to recruit our kids to stay. Do y'all know what we invest in a kid, educating them here in Amarillo? $7,500 a year. So by the time they go K through 12, we spend almost $100,000 to educate them per student. Every time I get a chance to talk to kids, I tell them, you belong to us. We put an investment in you, and it was a good investment. And we need you to stay. We need you to stay here, belong to our community, invest in our community, work here on the business, employ people. If we continue to lose our kids to Dallas and Denver and Albuquerque, we're losing the investment that we've already made. We taught them our values, our work ethic. They're us. And we need them to stay and be the next generation of leaders. So talking to our kids about how much we need them to stay and invest, return on the investment we've already made is really important. And I hereby charge you guys. You have kids and grandkids, and you're in their circles of influence. Start talking to them now and telling them that we need them to stay. They belong to Amarillo. They belong to the Panhandle. And we need them to be the next generation that stays here and makes us more successful than we've ever been. Okay, as y'all know, I love this stuff. I have notes and notes and notes. I could keep on going forever. Real quickly, just going to touch on the Civic Center, because it's an exciting project that we have coming up, and we need your participation in order to do it well. The Civic Center is 50 years old, and it's been a long time, over a decade, since we've really invested any money in it. It has not stayed with the times as far as being a convention center and being able to attract events outside of the city to come in for people to spend, again, their sales tax dollars or their tourism dollars here. Our facility cannot attract those kinds of events. They've gone on without us. We're still 50 years ago. So we have to decide as a city, are we going to change in order to recruit those events, or are we going to not invest and just stay a community center, which is essentially what it is right now. The Working Ranch Cowboy Association uses the Civic Center every year to host their World Championship Rodeo. It's a 5-day event. 30,000 people come in from all over the world, and they generate $5 million of economic activity in 5 days. What I want is an event like that 365 days a year. Because then we would generate tourism dollars, sales tax, all our businesses would have the revenue, and the city would have that revenue too. So I can see a vision for that. But what we need are citizens who are willing to serve on a citizens committee, because we want to have your feedback as we start an analysis of what do we need at the Civic Center. What's it going to cost? What kind of return will we get on those dollars? Just as business owners, we can't just go around throwing money at something because we want it to be fresh and shiny. We've got to throw money at something because we know we'll get that money back and more. That's the only way it makes sense to put those dollars down on a project like that. So we've started with an executive committee, and in the next few months we'll be expanding that committee out to more and more citizens who will be able to take tours of the Civic Center, see what it looks like right now, see what it is missing in the scope of these other events, and then we as citizens get to decide what kind of Civic Center do we want to have, and what kind of price tag are we willing to pay on it. And then it will go to a vote for the citizens to decide, yes, we're good with this, or no, we're not good with this. My promise to you is that we're not going to rush that process. It's a conversation that every idea we have early on, every question we have early on, makes whatever proposal the citizens come up with a stronger proposal in the end. So the sooner we can get your input and your questions on it, the better off we're going to be as a city as we move forward on that. But we're not going to rush you. So until that is ready and it's been vetted and everyone's had their chance to weigh in on it, you're not going to see it on the ballot. Maybe November of 19, maybe, but we might not be ready then. And if we're not ready then it'll be May of 2020, is what I would predict. But, okay, that's the Civic Center. So much more I could go over. But mainly, I want to get to these questions, and I want to tell you guys what a privilege it is to serve as an ambassador for our city. Amarillo has a unique opportunity right now. The Panhandle does. You recognize that, you know, it's the Panhandle of Texas that elected our leaders in Austin this last election. I don't have to tell this room that. Y'all all know that. They know that more than they ever have. In my conversations with the governor and the lieutenant governor's office, they fully recognize that they very well could have lost their jobs were it not for rural Texas voting for them as strongly as we did in November. So we have some influence, and I plan on using it. We need leaders who are willing to go down to Austin, to jump into those conversations, be respectful, but not be timid. Be resourceful, but be ready to have difficult conversations as our leaders are making choices. Right now, they're making some choices that are going to affect our cities going forward for a long time. And so I'm grateful for the opportunity to go and represent Amarillo. I study up on these things. Kevin can tell you we practice back and forth on, okay, well, if the governor says this, what are you going to say? I was privileged to be invited to go to the White House back in September and had some very interesting conversations there. It's a unique time with Trump in the White House. And I was very proud to go and represent our city respectfully with the right tone, but also being bold enough to raise my hand and ask questions about some of the issues that Washington is affecting us here with in Amarillo. Okay. We might not get through all these questions because, Connie, what's my time frame looking like?
What do we do? How long, 20 minutes to get to the...
Probably. Okay, let's just go as fast as we can. Okay, when we buy online and the purchase is taxed, does Amarillo receive its 2%? I recall having to state which county my Amarillo address is located in. This is a fantastic question. Right now, it does not feed back to the county. A very tiny portion on some sales do feed back to the counties or the cities. Most of it does not. So when you buy online and there's a little line there that says state tax and it charges you a little tax, all of that goes to Austin. The exception is like Amazon has a warehouse or a distributorship, like they have one in San Marcos. And so the city and county in San Marcos, because there is a warehouse there where it actually gets shipped to and out of, they get to capture some of it. But we don't have that. And most cities in Texas don't have that. So one of the things, big aspirational legislative items that we're trying to get the Texas legislature to address is fixing that problem, requiring Amazon to shoot that to wherever that product is delivered. If it's delivered to Amarillo, then Amarillo needs to get a portion of that tax. And it would help us, it would solve some of the problems. The Supreme Court helped us a few months ago by finding that the Wayfair case, finding that yes, those entities were entitled. They did need to find a way to split it up. But it hasn't quite yet trickled down legislatively on exactly how to do that. I would assume with some technological magic wand that the technology exists in order to do that. It just has, that Supreme Court case is so recent, it hasn't had the effect yet of Texas legislature putting it into law. And so that's a conversation that we're having in Austin even this session. So that's a very good question. are you a Republican, and what does fiscally conservative mean? Well, I do vote Republican on most issues, but I try to vote my conscience on everything. Obviously, in the city election, there's no Democrat, there's no Republican. We're all Amarilloans, because a pothole doesn't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican, and neither does a police officer. Those issues, those local issues, I just don't think it's beneficial for us to try and divide each other on party lines, especially when our parties are struggling so much right now to have healthy dialogue. So I don't have any problem answering that question, but I very much so believe that our local elections should stay nonpartisan until we can figure out how to have more productive conversations in our partisan world. What does fiscally conservative mean? Well, I guess that's just my opinion. I think it means you live within your means. You plan for rainy days. You try to cut waste at every point that you possibly can. And let me just say, I'm sure somebody in our city has 3 staplers. I'm sure there are little pockets of, well, we could do better on that. But as a whole, we are starving on a budget that is the lowest tax rate for a city our size in the state of Texas. And I could show you the metrics on it, that we as a city operate our city on less dollars than the 10 cities bigger than us and the 10 cities lower than us. So what we operate our city on per capita, per taxpayer, is half of what those other cities operate their cities on. So we are superstars at being fiscally conservative. And our bond ratings prove that. Every time we issue bonds, the bond council predicts what the bond is going to sell for, and boom, it sells quicker and higher than what he predicts, because we have such a strong reputation for being fiscally conservative. So that's good. How have some of the state and national issues affected Amarillo? In other words, immigration, trade, etc. You know, the main thing that I think is happening right now that is affecting us in D.C. is this feeling of instability. None of us like the idea that our government is struggling to govern because there's so much fight going on. And so all of that creates instability, whether it's in foreign policy or domestic economic policy. We're all feeling that sense of instability. We just rolled out of the government shutdown. You know, none of us are liking that. Business owners thinking, should we expand, should we not expand? We don't want to do that if we don't feel stable. So in my mind, it's less about the actual political issues, and it's more about the style of how we're choosing to have dialogue with each other. I am so grateful that we in Amarillo are choosing to have a tone that reflects who we are as a city. We are respecting each other. We are welcoming different viewpoints. We do not have to agree with each other. As a matter of fact, the best ideas are ones that have been hammered on a little bit, right? Somebody comes in with some hard questions, and that shifts the idea from good to great to best. And I'm a complete believer in the process of dialogue and receiving criticism to improve ideas. But you have to do it in a way that respects each other. Because at the end of the dialogue, we still live together. We're still neighbors. My kids are going to go to school with your kids. And I want that. I want us to be a healthy city. So I think instability is a gigantic problem. You know, defense spending is very important to us. We have Pantex here. We have Bell. Both of those companies, let's see, they employ about 4,000 people between the two of them and generate a tremendous amount of economic activity and stability in our community. If all we had to rely on was agriculture, cattle prices, and energy prices, whew, we'd be in a world of hurt some years. Those companies provide economic stability in a large way across our city, and I'm grateful for it. But we have to pay attention to defense spending policy, and I think we have an administration that's friendly to that right now. and we're trying very hard to, I know that Congressman Thornberry, as well as both the senators, have reached out to my office talking about those topics, so I'm glad that we have an administration that supports that. Education, I think, is something that affects us, affects the whole country, but President Trump is trying very hard to bring his businessman thinking into the education world so that we can have education that makes sense, not just educating kids because that's how we've always educated kids. And that's a hard thing to do. That's that nasty 6-letter word, did I count it right, called change. And change is always hard, and it's hard to be the one to get the boulder rolling first. But I'm interested in some of the education policy that they're talking about, because I know as a taxpayer, the cost of education is killing us, and it's not sustainable. The way we're doing it now, I question its effectiveness, and I know, looking at the dollars involved, that we can't sustain it. So we've got to be looking at how to change education, how we're doing that on a large scale, and I think President Trump is trying to drive that conversation. Energy obviously affects our region. Without the Texas Panhandle, where would the world get its fuel, its fiber, its food? And so those are the three things that out of Washington, D.C., I look at. What is the fuel policy? What are the energy policies coming down? Fiber and food, both in what we grow on the hoof and what we grow in the ground. Farm bill is very important, and farm policy is very important to our communities. And so we got a farm bill passed back in the fall after a tremendous amount of work. We're very proud of that, and it's helpful to our farmers. So if we can keep the FSA office open without a government shutdown, then they'll be able to implement that new farm bill and get what they need from that. So there are a lot of places that DC touches us locally, and it is important. I'm thankful for this room that cares about it enough to stay engaged and want to be informed about it. 10 minutes, she tells me. Talk faster. Okay. What are your predictions about curbside trash, and how will the wind treat the carts, and will we leave them outside? My predictions about curbside trash are that once we get over that 6-letter word of this is something different and it's a change, I think it's going to be an improvement in services. We would not have done it if we did not want to be providing better customer service. I have had multiple citizens stop me at the grocery store, stop me at church, and say, I'm so glad to be rid of that dumpster sitting in front of my house. Thank you for that cart. I can clean it. It can stay clean. And people, I had an email a few weeks ago from a lady who said, can we find a way to keep the animals out of my trash bags? Because she's somebody that doesn't have a dumpster. She just has to put her trash on the curb. And she said the squirrels and raccoons are getting into it. What are we going to do? And I was so glad to be able to tell her, soon you will be getting a cart. So, I know it's hard to change. And I know that there are kinks in any new system, and we don't have all the kinks figured out yet. So I would ask for your patience, and I would ask for your grace as we try hard to serve you better. A lot of misinformation about the carts and who's going to get them. 12,000 customers are getting them, which represents roughly 20% of the solid waste users in the city of Amarillo. It's not a citywide thing. That's not the plan. The plan is to only use it for people who have a dead-end alley where the trash truck has to back out blind, people who don't have a dumpster and put their bags out on the curb, or people who have a dumpster in their front yard or on the street in front of their house. That's just not sanitary, and it's tacky, so we're getting rid of that. But what's going to happen in 2045? I don't know. Will the whole city have carts? I don't know. I guess y'all can come and get me then if I misrepresented something. All I know is that right now the plan is only to affect those people that I just named off in those 3 categories, and it's to improve their service. Canyon has had these carts for over a decade, and so last I checked, Canyon gets about the same amount of wind that we get, and we did clear that with their city, and they occasionally have a cart that blows away. It's no cost. Call us. We'll come and replace your cart. I don't anticipate that that's going to be a regular occurrence or even a problem that we're going to really have to address. It is something that people are really worried about, and so I respectfully want to take that part of the question and just refer you to the fact that Canyon's operating with these carts. They seem to be operating fine with them, and they've been doing it for a long period of time. Okay, my time is going by. How do you stand on immigration in Amarillo? 2 quick answers. It's very important for us to enforce the laws that are on the book. I am not for anarchy, because just because we don't like something, if we don't like something, doesn't mean we have the right to buck our system of democracy and do something different. If there's a law we don't like, we need to run for office. We need to talk to our legislators. We need to lawfully abide in the process to change it. So I am not for sanctuary cities, because we need to enforce the laws as they stand today. We should not go rogue as a city. That's anarchy. And I don't have any respect for that, because I'm a believer in democracy. So if you don't like the law, that's fine. You have one vote and one voice, and you get to stand up and make your opinion known. But we are going to follow the law, because that's what we do as Americans. Okay, how are we going to pay for the extra millions that the ballpark is going to cost? The ballpark costs $45 million to build. We're on budget, and as a matter of fact, I believe we're going to be $5,000 under budget, which is exciting. The ballpark is not being paid for by property tax or sales tax dollars. We have an additional tax in Amarillo called the hotel occupancy tax. So when people come through and stay in our hotels, they pay this, it's a 2% tax on top of their hotel bill. And the state of Texas collects part of that. The venue district out at the Tri-State Fairgrounds collects part of that. And the city gets to collect part of that hot tax. What did I say? 15% is the tax. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. So, thank you. This is why it's so valuable. So the hotel occupancy tax is meant to drive tourism into your community. So you can only spend it on things that are tied to tourism. And I've heard people say, well, why don't we take the money that we're spending on the ballpark and use it to repair our streets? That's not allowed. State law says we cannot spend it on street repair. Why haven't we used it to hire more police officers? That's not allowed. State law says it has to go towards something that promotes tourism in your community. So a lot of the things in the general fund that we would spend money on, we cannot use hotel occupancy tax to pay for those things. So you should know that the ballpark is being funded by hotel occupancy tax. So it has to be tied to tourism, and as an event venue, it qualifies as something you can use the hotel occupancy tax dollars for. Those tax dollars, it's not Kevin and I, it's not Connie, it's people who come from out of town and get off of I-40. Kevin and I own a hotel on I-40, and in the first 40 days that it was open, we had guests from 40 different states. I-40 is a beast for our community as far as driving tourism dollars. So it's those people that are funding the payment of the ballpark. Okay, think I can do the rest of these in 60-second lightning round? Let's see. That one is about trash, so I'm going to pass on that because we've already done that. Why was the city claimed to purchase the warehouse on Johnson Street for storage when the city owns the Santa Fe Depot, auction gallery, and old Railway Express building that is completely unused and vacant? We did purchase that warehouse, number one. It is a warehouse, and it is close. It's just right across the street from the Civic Center. And it backs up to another warehouse that we already own. And the Santa Fe Depot, you know, we have some people looking project-wise at the depot. And I'm hopeful that the depot is going to turn into something much cooler than storage for our city. So I think just to answer that question, it makes a lot more sense logistically for the location of the warehouse that we purchased. It's between an existing warehouse that we already store things in and the Civic Center. It's all right there close. And the Santa Fe has a couple of, well, we got a couple of hooks in the water that I think would be really cool if they would come about. A lot cooler than using that space for storage. Okay, explain how the ballpark is being paid for. Ready with that? Dumpsters and alleys have worked for years. Why start the Curbside Park program? I think I answered that. It's just for those people in those 3 special categories, some of whom don't even have access to a dumpster. Why do you have such a problem, public document, and refuse to talk to the people? I'm talking now. Yeah, so I'm available by email. You can make an appointment with me. Maybe I misunderstood that question. With last question, by the way, how do I round it up? With all the projects laid out in the blueprint for Amarillo, how are we going to pay for all of them? Bless you for asking this question. It's true. There are so many visionary things that we could be doing, so many good projects. We need more baseball fields. We need soccer fields. We need indoor volleyball courts and basketball courts. We need more swimming pools. There's so many things that we want to have in our city. How are we going to pay for them? Well, we've got to continue managing our finances responsibly. And we've got to have a vision for how we increase our sales tax revenue, increase our hot revenue, and try to go about funding some of those wants with the extra dollars that we can create by having a vision for driving tourism and economic development in our city. I think that's the best approach. We've got to have a long-term view of it, 10, 20, 30 years. But I'm just convinced that we are currently living in the greatest Amarillo that there's ever been. And let me tell you, I'm not content with it. So hopefully it will just keep getting better and better. Connie, y'all been so patient. I know it's kind of hot in here. Y'all have been great. That was really awesome. Thank you. Talk about the passion and the energy. Oh, yeah. Thank you for coming. You did the lightning round great. So with that, I believe we're adjourned to listen to the president. Great. Thank you so much.